Hey, what's going on everybody? Commander Crane here, and we are back with another Pioneer deck tech, and today we're going to be talking about the newest version of Bant Toughness Aggro in Pioneer. I am very excited to share this very spicy list with you. As always, at the end of the video, let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about this deck? Is there a specific card that I should have put in this deck that I did not? Or do you have suggestions for upcoming videos? Just let me know in the comments section. And one more thing before we really hop into the video, I have to mention that we are currently on the road to 1,000 subscribers. And as of the recording of this video, we're at 982. We are so close. And we're going to be doing a huge giveaway once we get there. It's going to be sealed product. It's going to be decks. It's going to be singles. It's going to be gigantic. You're not going to want to miss it. So go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you have not already, because one of the things to be entered into the giveaway is you have to be subscribed to the channel. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you have not already. The other thing I want to mention before I really hop into the deck here. So I know obviously I have the newest version of this. So I sort of did make this list already quite some time ago. It was like well over a year ago. I made a Bant Walls aggro list. It played like Arcades the Strategist, and it played a whole bunch of different walls like Hover Barrier and things like that. So this list is a little bit different. I think one thing that I really undervalued when I built that last deck is the fact that if you play a lot of non-defenders, which we'll kind of talk about that in a minute, because spoiler alert, there's only one creature in this entire deck that actually has defender. The problem is like either A, if you don't have the exact pieces you need, it doesn't work, but like Arcades, you have to play walls to be able to, you know, take advantage of it, but also it only helps creatures with defender with their toughness. So if you play creatures without defender, then they don't get a boost from Arcades, and it just didn't work as well as I would have liked to. The other thing is like, there's a whole bunch of cards that just automatically say like creatures assign damage with their toughness instead of, you know, having to jump through all these hoops. And I thought it would be better to, instead of have a bunch of creatures with defender, let's just have a whole bunch of creatures with high toughness instead of that. So it's kind of, it's the newer version of like Toughness Matters aggro, but this deck is a little bit different at its heart. And one thing I really like too is there's a whole bunch of creatures that have really been printed in the last, you know, like year that are huge for this deck. So okay, let's go and hop into it here. But the real inspiration was an Aether Drift. There was a new card, and that card is, I'm sorry if I mispronounce this, Kelorna Coral Titan. It's a 0/8 for 2 mana. So basically in this deck, it's an 8/8 for 2 mana, which is just absolutely insane. I mean, an 0/8 for 2, it's just crazy. So this is the actual main inspiration for the deck. For those who don't know the flavor, Muraganda has vanilla creatures, and that's why there's a whole bunch of these vanilla creatures, and Kelorna is an 0/8 for 2. So that was the inspiration behind the actual deck, but let's go and hop into it here. So we're playing 24 creatures in this deck, including Kelorna. There's 24, so I just wanted to mention that as well. But let's go and hop into the rest of the creatures here. So we're playing 4 copies of Aegis Turtle. Makes sense. It's an 0/5 for 1 blue, so basically it's a 5/5 for 1 blue. It's perfect for this deck. We're also playing 4 copies of Armored Armadillo and 2 Sidesi's Faithful in this deck. So I was looking for some 0/4s for 1 mana, because Aegis Turtle is the only 0/5 for 1 mana. So at that point I was like, okay, I need to look for some 0/4s. There was a whole bunch of different 0/4s that I could have played in this deck. I ultimately decided to play Armored Armadillo and Sidesi's Faithful just because I felt like they had the most potential upside. I know there's a creature that's like, whenever you cast like a blue, black, or red spell, you can gain a life. So, I mean, we kind of have some blue spells, but I just thought that having a Ward 1 creature, as well as a creature that potentially could bounce something, is probably just the best thing to be doing. The thing that's really sad is Armored Armadillo's activated ability isn't really a boost, unless we don't have like a toughness enabler in play. So it's kind of funny how it has an activated ability, but it doesn't really help it. So it's really just a 0/4 with Ward 1 for 1 mana, which is already pretty darn good. So, but anyways, we're also playing 3 copies of Nyx Fleece Ram and 3 Tetsuko Umezawa Fugitive in our deck. So Nyx Fleece Ram, I decided to play this over, there's a few cards that are like 0/6s for 2. Like, I know there's this weird morph creature from like Fate Reforged, and I decided to play Nyx Fleece Ram just because, yeah, it's a little bit smaller, but being able to gain a life is just kind of huge against the opposing aggro decks. So that's why I decided to play Nyx Fleece Ram instead. I also love Tetsuko Umezawa in this deck just because creatures you control with power or toughness 1 or less can't be blocked. That basically means that almost all of our creatures in our deck can't actually be blocked when we have this in play. And when we have all these like 5 toughness creatures that are basically 5/5s and such, all it's going to take is just having a couple of those, playing a Tetsuka Umezawa, and the game is just over. But the one creature that we are playing with Defender in this deck is the Pride of Whole Clade. I know I featured it in our Turtle deck quite some time ago, and it was definitely the best card in the entire deck. Costs X less to cast, where X is the total toughness of creatures you control, so it's kind of like a Galta, and then it's a Defender and it's a 2/15, and then for 4 mana until end of turn, target creature control gets +1/+0, gains whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw cards equal to its toughness, and can attack as though it didn't have Defender. So obviously it has like the built-in self, being able to attack, but then we're playing a whole bunch of different cards that will allow it to attack. So overall, huge fan of Pride of Whole Clade. Technically, if we get like a double Aegis Turtle hand, we can actually play this on turn 2, which is pretty funny. So not that that's going to happen a lot, but it is something that could potentially happen with this deck. Okay, so those are all the creatures. Let's go and talk about the toughness enablers. And with no surprise to anyone, we're playing 4 copies of Assault Formation and 4 copies of High Alert. So Assault Formation allows us to have the fastest hand just because it's 2 mana and each creature you control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. This is part of the reason why I'm not playing cards like Fortified Rampart, for instance. It's the big 0/6 for 2 with Defender, is it has Defender, so we can't actually attack with it. We can't attack with it right away unless we pay the activated ability on that, or if we have a High Alert in play, which we're playing 4 copies of that as well. But that's part of the reason why we're not really playing that many actual Defenders. But I do like Assault Formation in the sense that having the nice, like it's static, and then we have nice activated abilities there. Being able to activate the Pride of the Whole Clade, as well as also Anthem our creatures, is pretty solid. I really do love High Alert, though. High Alert is consistent. We don't have to pay any mana for Pride of the Whole Clade, for instance. It just says your creatures deal damage equal to their toughness rather than the power, and then we don't have to activate Pride of the Whole Clade. So overall, big fan of High Alert. But we're also playing 4 copies of Huatli the Sun's Heart. Again, it's just another permanent way for our creatures to be able to assign damage with their toughness. And then the activated ability there, the nice loyalty ability, can be very relevant. I mean, if we have the new guy in play, we just gain 8. Like, okay, good luck, aggro. Good luck beating us at all. So definitely huge fan of Huatli the Sun's Heart in the deck. And then we're also playing 2 copies of Tower Defense. Part of it's because it's just really flavorful, but also the other part of it is 2 mana, creatures you control basically get +5/+5 in reach until end of turn. It's just absolutely crazy. Antheming your whole board +5/+5 is crazy, so that's why we're just playing the Tower Defense. Simply put, it's just a really, really good card in this deck. But that is the entire main board. Let's go and hop into the lands real quick, which it's a pretty straightforward 3-color mana base. So we're playing 4 copies of each of the fast lands: Botanical Sanctum, Razorverge Thicket, and Seachrome Coast. We're also playing a whole bunch of shock lands, 3 breeding pools, 2 temple gardens, and 2 hallowed fountains. And then rounding out our lands, simply put, we're playing 1 Boseiju, 1 Otawara, and 1 basic forest. It's a pretty straightforward mana base. I decided to play the basic forest just because of pretty much Pride of the Whole Clade as well as Assault Formation. We are going to need green to activate those abilities. I know we're playing a lot more like blue spells, but I decided that playing the basic forest, I think, was the best move. But as our spacey basic land of the day, of course, we had to include the new Aether Drift Forest. Definitely a huge fan of this one. I'd say it's probably my second favorite behind the swamp, but I definitely do like the forest in general. So, don't go anywhere yet, though. We still have to talk about our sideboard, as well as some budget options for the deck. So, sideboarding is going to be really simple. I love to have a little bit of a disclaimer, though. If you feel like changing the sideboard, if you either have already built this deck or you're thinking about building this deck, feel free to go ahead and change things up. This is just a general guide on, what I would personally play in the sideboard based on, like, my local metagame, as well as what I typically run into on Arena with this deck. So, alright, 2 copies of Deafening Silence. It's fantastic against all the different Spellslinger decks. 3 Rest in Peace, fantastic against anything graveyard related. If they're playing Reanimator, if they're playing Izzet Phoenix, if they're playing Roots, whatever, bring in the Rest in Peace. 2 copies of Portable Hole, takes care of just any small non-land permanent. It's a fantastic card. There's a reason why almost every white deck in Pioneer plays this in their sideboard. We're also playing 3 copies of Get Lost. I thought about playing Sheltered by Ghosts just because, like, high toughness, it could matter, but ultimately I do like the better consistency of Get Lost. That's why I decided to play 3 copies of that. 2 copies of Dromoka's Command. Simply put, there's a ton of enchantments going around in the metagame right now, so I wanted an additional way to be able to sacrifice or get rid of some enchantments. But it's also nice because if our opponent's playing like any damage-based removal, like not that Anger of the Gods is really that good against us, but if they're playing anything like that, it can stop that or burn spells. And then also the fight ability is pretty solid in general. And then we're also playing 3 copies of Spell Pierce. I wanted a cheap counterspell, and Spell Pierce definitely fits the bill, simply put. And that's also, you know, in Aether Drift. I kind of forgot that it was in Aether Drift until I was actually making this video, so figured I'd feature the new one on there. But yeah, overall, the sideboard, I'm a pretty big fan of how the sideboard actually came together here. But the last thing we have to talk about is the budget options, which I'll be honest with you, the only way that you can really make this deck cheaper is the dual lands. That's the only thing you can do. All the cards that are in our deck, I think the most expensive card that you actually have to buy in this deck is Pride of the Whole Clade, which is like $1.25 US a piece. That's it. The rest of the deck is just a bunch of commons and uncommons that are incredibly cheap, and then you got like a handful of rares that are already super cheap as it is already, and that's pretty much it. And I mean, for a 3-color deck, the fact that it's $204 US is incredibly cheap. Most 3-color decks are crazy expensive because they're mid-range or control, and you need all these good, you know, different control cards that see play in a bunch of different formats. Nope, we're basically just playing commons and uncommons and a bunch of dual lands. So that's why it's only $204 US. But I was able to get the budget list down to 51. I kept all the fast lands in. Pretty much all I did was I swapped out the shock lands and the channel lands for like pain lands. That's pretty much all I did. That's it. That's all I did. So you can play the budget list for $51, which is, again, the exact same as the regular list. Just the lands are a little bit different. But in general, this deck was really, really fun to make. When I saw that we were getting an 08 for 2 mana, I knew I had to build this deck. I didn't know what it was going to look like quite yet, but overall, I'm pretty happy with how it went. Again, I cut down pretty much all the defenders and decided to just have a more consistent aggro plan. So definitely let me know what you think about that in the comment section. You know, let me know if you build this deck or if you have a deck similar to it in general, regardless of format. Let me know how the deck plays. Let me know what you think about the new Octopus or Aether Drift in general. Overall, I do like this card, and it was definitely very, very sweet to be able to build a new deck featuring it. So that takes us to the end of the video here. Thanks so much for watching. The deck lists are in the description below if you'd like to check them out for yourself. Huge shout out to our channel members, Ralph, Matt, Arcadius, Ray, Gary, Suranoki, Nightred3, and our premium channel member, Michael D. If you were interested in being a channel member, it starts at $1 US a month, and you get access to the exclusive Commander Crane Discord, as well as other features here on the channel. So, I'm Commander Crane. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope to catch you in the next one.